So for those of you that know me, you know who this is right here. This is Dude, my bearded dragon. And today I'm going to do a video all on him and bearded dragon care. So bearded dragons are honestly one of my favorite lizards just because they are just so amazing. They're just so nice. They have the best personalities. Dude is the most chill bearded dragon of all time. I can take him out whenever. He'll just sit there, and I honestly think he's my little dog. This is my puppy, and that's that. So for many people that want a pet reptile and they're new, I think beardies are perfect, especially if they want one that they can hold all the time, because beardies will tolerate the handling way more than a lot of other reptiles will. So bearded dragons are very common. You see them at many pet stores, Petco and PetSmart. Again, I never really recommend buying one from there just because you don't know if it's going to be a healthy animal that you're getting. But Dude actually came from Petco. My ex-boyfriend actually bought him for me, I think like 6 years ago, because he's like 6 now. And I've had him ever since. He's the love of my life. I love this dragon so much. He's my little baby. So when it comes to a bearded dragon enclosure, you're looking at least a 40-gallon enclosure for an adult. The babies are very small, but they grow a lot within their first year. And then you're going to need at least that 40-gallon for these guys. They will use way more space. You can get them a bigger tank that's not going to be like a gecko, and they may not be able to find their food. They'll definitely find their food. They'll be totally fine, and they'll use the extra space. So when it comes to bearded dragon diet, that's one of the things that makes them so great for beginners, because these animals eat so much. And they eat a variety of different things, which is also very easy to keep. So if you have a baby bearded dragon, they're mostly going to be eating insects at that time because they're going to be needing all of that protein to grow. So within the first year, you're definitely going to be feeding them primarily insects, although you do still want to offer them salads as well. And then as they turn into adults, you're mainly going to be feeding them salads, and then insects will just be more of a treat for them. Some of the insects that you can provide for these guys are Dubia roaches. They're so nutritious, so good for them. That's something you'll definitely want to be feeding. Crickets, superworms, waxworms are very fatty, so that's usually just a treat. And my guy absolutely loves hornworms, and hornworms are so nutritious. That's definitely something to look into. They absolutely love it, and it's really good for them. Then when you're looking into the salads for these guys, you're going to be looking at a lot of leafy greens, collard greens, Swiss chard, dandelion greens. Romaine lettuce can be used, although it's not something that you really want to be offering them just simply because it doesn't have a lot of vitamins and nutrients for them. It will hydrate them, but that's pretty much it. So my last video, my feeding video, I actually only had romaine lettuce in my house, which is why I fed him that, and people went nuts over it. So I'm not going to recommend romaine lettuce whatsoever. You also don't want to be feeding these guys kale or spinach or iceberg lettuce. Those are just all off of the list. Some other things to avoid would be things with high acidity. They do love cherry tomatoes, but it should be a very rare treat for them just because that acidity is not very good for them, and they can only handle a tiny little bit of it every now and then. Bananas are something else that you only want to feed occasionally just because it will mess with their calcium absorption. So that's something that can be a very rare treat, but you don't want to be feeding that very often. Some fruits that you can feed them are strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, cantaloupe, watermelon, basically anything that just doesn't have a really high acidity, such as like oranges or lemons, anything like that. Something else I'd like to mention too with their insects, you should be gut loading their insects, which means that you're going to be feeding the insects a lot of those leafy greens and good things that you're going to be feeding your dragon as well. That way when they eat those insects, they're going to get even more nutrition with them. And when you're going to be feeding the insects, you want to make sure that you're dusting it with calcium D3 and a multivitamin at least once or twice a month. So some bearded dragons are a little picky and don't really want to eat their salads, so little tricks like putting the insects on top of the salads, just like I do with my veiled chameleon, will kind of trick them into just going and eating the rest of their salad as well, because they kind of have a similar tongue to a chameleon and it's very sticky and they just stick it out when they go to grab their food. So when they do that for the insect, they'll probably grab the salad as well. Something that Dude has always loved, that's one of his favorite things to eat, is actually sweet peas. So that's something to try for your bearded dragon. They're very healthy and he just loves them, and it's adorable watching him eat them. I've heard that bee pollen is also another great thing to put on top of a beardy salad. It adds extra vitamins and nutrients, and it also entices them to eat their salad. So it's something worth trying. Something that can make caring for bearded dragons a little bit more pricey and difficult for beginners is the fact that they do need very specialized lighting. So bearded dragons do need heat, and I use a 100-watt bulb for my heat for Dude, and that works perfectly for him. You do want to reach a hot spot of at least 90 to 95 degrees for these guys. They do love the warmth, so they definitely need that heat to be able to digest their food. Another thing with bearded dragons is that you are definitely going to need a UVB source. This is critical for their health. You cannot go without this for a bearded dragon. They will get metabolic bone disease and die. You don't want that, so definitely do not skip out on the UVB for these guys. And for UVB, you again don't want the spiral UVBs because they don't reach down very far. So to get that really high spectrum UVB that your dragon needs, you should get the really long UVBs, the tube ones. And I will show you exactly what I'm using to help you out. You also want to make sure that it's a desert one, so it's going to be a 10.0 UVB. When it comes to the situation of using a water bowl for a bearded dragon, honestly, it's optional. They don't really drink from water bowls, although some might, so it's kind of a good thing just to offer in case. And I do have a water bowl in my enclosure for Dude. But they usually just get most of their hydration from the food that they're eating, as well as just misting them down, and they'll end up drinking the water. Another thing to keep in mind with bearded dragons is that you should be giving them baths. Again, they're dogs. They need baths. So basically, when they're having a shed or a rough shed, you may need to just go give them a little bath. Just use like warm water, not hot, and just let them soak in it, and they'll drink some water. And if you have a constipated beardy, he will most likely poop too, because that warmth will get their digestion going, and they love to poop in their bath. So when you're giving a beardy a bath, you just want to be using water. Don't put any soap or anything. It's not like a dog, a literal dog. It doesn't need the soap. It literally is just using the water and hydrating itself and getting rid of that shed, because that gets really itchy and annoying for them. So when you're setting up your enclosure for a bearded dragon, I highly recommend hammocks, because Dude loves his hammock so much. He'll sleep in there, and it's the cutest thing ever, but they love hammocks. It's something you should offer them. They do like to climb a little bit, so I have some places for him to climb around in his enclosure as well. When it comes to the subject of substrate, I personally use tile. I find that it is so easy to clean. I don't really like loose substrate. I used to use the calcium sand for Dude because I didn't know any better, and that stuff is god awful. I don't know why they even sell it in stores anymore, but it really is really bad for your animal. Don't buy it. Don't do it at all. Not only can they get impaction from just eating the sand, they can also get eye issues too because of all of the dust it creates. It's also very messy to clean up, so that's not very fun. With a tile, it's so easy because if they poop, you can just wipe it up and you're done. Some people use carpet, but you can imagine scrubbing poop off of a carpet compared to just a tile. So yeah, that's kind of why I go with a tile. It also keeps it nice and warm in the enclosure, and I just love how it looks too. Some people have brought up using moss in their enclosure for bearded dragons, and I wouldn't recommend this. They're very dry species. They come from a desert. You shouldn't be offering them high humidity, things like that, just because it could possibly cause a bacterial infection. So in order to avoid that, I think that it's best to just take them out and give them their baths when they need it, and then other than that, they should be fine in their dry enclosure. One more thing. So another weird thing that beardies do, actually there's a couple things I'll just go over really quick. So a lot of people message me because their bearded dragon is going crazy and running back and forth in their enclosure and such. Usually this means that they're gonna poop. So that's a good indication that your beardie is preparing to poop. I don't know why they do that. It's just a behavior, and it's really weird, but that's what's going on. Another reason they could be acting crazy is sometimes the males get a little crazy during breeding season, so some people try not to handle them as much during that time. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. Another weird behavior that beardies do is they actually like kind of pop their eyes out of the socket. It's really creepy. The first time I saw a dude doing it, I like freaked out. I thought his eyes were gonna pop out of his head. It's totally normal. Don't be alarmed. They just do this. It's actually cleaning their own eyes out, so it's just a normal behavior for bearded dragons. And it's something to just be aware about in case you see it happening and you freak out and you think that your animal's dying or something. He's not. He's all good. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. Beardies are just #1 in my book. I love them so much. They're amazing pets, and it's something that's worth looking into if you want one. Let me know if you have any questions. Leave a comment. I would love to help anyone out, and I hope that you have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for watching my video. So this is Dude's enclosure. It is a 40-gallon enclosure. That is the minimum size that you should have for a bearded dragon that's an adult. He is right over here. He actually loves to climb up on things and bask, so he has a lot of different options over here. Sometimes he sleeps over in this fake lavender plant, and he also loves his hammock over there. Hammocks are so amazing for bearded dragons. I highly recommend them. He has a little water dish in the back over there, and then just some fake plants, and that's his feeding bowl up in the front, but he just ate, so it's cleaned up, and here he is. And when it comes to the lighting, so he has a 100-watt bulb in here, and then this is what I mean by the long tubing UVB. You really want the long ones for that high spectrum lighting that they need. The spiral ones just don't reach down far enough, so you definitely want something like this. And you want to make sure, again, that it's a desert bulb, so it's going to be a 10.0 UVB.